All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, I will give you my overview of the Kansas City Chiefs 2023 season, how they got to this point. So let's get into it. So obviously, started off the season, obviously, hanging the banner for their Super Bowl championship from last year, playing the Detroit Lions to kick off the season. And it didn't go so well. They ended up losing that game 21-20, and you could point to a lot of drops in this game at crucial points. Kadarius Toney, had a rough first game of the year. Has had rough games throughout the season, and he was responsible for Mahomes throws him a pass, gets tipped up in the air. Intercepted by Brian Branch of the Lions. He takes that back for a pick six. Then later in the game, Chiefs are trying to get in field goal range, and they probably would have if Kadarius Toney caught that pass towards the end of the game, which they would have basically been in field goal range. Butker probably would have kicked the game-winning field goal, and they would have started off the season 1-0. But they ended up losing that game by 1. There was no Travis Kelce in the game. He got ruled out with an injury, but he did come back in week 2. The Chiefs were able to bounce back. They won a low-scoring game with Jacksonville. They won 17-9 in that contest. Kelce scored a touchdown, and that was the Ian Eagle calling the touchdown, saying, "Oh, he finds that blank space in the defense," because that's when all the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift stuff began. And then, of course, she goes to her first Chiefs game on week 3, and that was when the complaining started, and the Chiefs were all over the Bears in that game. 41-10 the final score was. I mean, it wasn't even a game. I remember I took the Bears with the points in that game. The Bears just could not get anything going, and it looked like, all right, Chiefs are back to their winning ways, and that continued because they went on to win their next, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, their next 6 games. So yeah, then the following week, Sunday night, week 4, against the Jets, a game that I was in attendance for because I wanted to see Patrick Mahomes take on Aaron Rodgers. And I ended up seeing Patrick Mahomes play probably one of his worst games as a pro. And I saw Zach Wilson play one of his best games as a pro. But the Chiefs still ended up winning 23-20. Mahomes threw a couple of picks in the game. Should have had 3, but there was a flag that took that away. The Chiefs had the lead in the game. They were up 17-0. And then the Jets, they came back, made it a game, but the Chiefs ultimately won the game by 3. Zach Wilson had a chance to put together a game-winning drive, but then he fumbled, and then the Chiefs, they were able to pick up first downs and end the game, and they won that. So then the following week, they played the Vikings, won 27-20 in that contest. And I know towards the end of the game there were some flags that, there should have been penalties towards the end that would have set the Vikings up to maybe tie the game, but that ended up not happening. So they won that game. In week 5, they won a low-scoring game in week 6 against the Broncos. They won 19-8. Against the Chargers in the following week, winning 31-17. But then this is where things kind of started to change for the Chiefs. So week 8 against the Broncos, they ended up losing 24-9, and Mahomes had the flu. It was not a good game for them. Receivers were dropping passes. It's just a very sloppy game by the Chiefs in this game. Yeah, so this kind of like changed the season a little bit for them. Because, offense still was not looking great, but like they were getting the job done. This is kind of where the season started to change. And, so they lose that game. Then they go to Germany. They beat the Dolphins 21-14, but they didn't score anything in the second half. Then they went on their bye. They come back. The rematch of the Super Bowl with the Eagles. The Eagles win that game 21-17, and that was, again, a crucial drop in the game. Mahomes throws it up to Valdez-Scantling. He can't hold it on. He can't hold on to it. He can't catch it. Chiefs end up losing that game. Then they get back. Then they get back on the right track, defeating the Raiders 31-17. They were actually losing that game at one point, but They were able to come back, win it by a couple of scores. Then Mahomes' first trip to Lambeau Field against the Packers, they lose that game 27-19. Again, Valdez-Scantling, it looked like could have been a pass interference call, but that ended up not happening. They ended up not calling a flag. And what's interesting is because the following week was the Bills game, but what's interesting is Mahomes said that he doesn't want he doesn't want flags like being the reason that they win. Something along the lines of that. He said he doesn't want flags impacting the game. He wants he wasn't upset about the pass interference call. The following week, though, it was a complete 180 because the Bills needed this game badly. They ended up winning it. But the Chiefs, you thought were going to win it because towards the end of the game, Mahomes throws that pass to Kelsey. He laterals it to Kadarius Toney. Toney runs it in for a touchdown. And you think, wow, the Chiefs just pulled that off. They're going to get the win and crush the Bills' hopes and dreams of making the playoffs. Now, later on in the season, they end up crushing the Bills' hopes and dreams. But not at this moment. But from what Mahomes said in that press conference after the Packers game to what ends up happening in this game where he just was so... I mean, I've never seen Mahomes more upset than how he was at that. And it was the right call. That was the right call. But I do like to think it just has a lot to do with the fact that the kind of year his receivers are having and just the offense just has not been able to get it going, get that consistency. That I think that just... It was anger building up and frustration building up inside of him, and he just let it all out. But it was the right call. The officials did make the right call. Toney was lined up off sides. But yeah, so then after that, we move on to the Patriots game. They won by 10. Again, there was another interception. Toney gets the ball thrown to him. It gets hit up in the air. It gets picked off. Again, Mahomes visibly upset on the sidelines about it. But yeah, this was the game here with the Raiders where I just thought, yeah, this team does not look like a team that's going to be going anywhere. They'll make the playoffs, but they're probably not going to go to the Super Bowl, make it back to the Super Bowl. It's the Raiders game. Because I'm pretty sure that the Raiders, they didn't complete a pass after the first quarter, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Back-to-back defensive touchdowns by the Raiders on back-to-back drives. You had, the botched exchange between Isaiah Pacheco and Patrick Mahomes. That led to a touchdown. Then after that, you got the pick six that was thrown. Yeah, the Chiefs just looked really sloppy in that game. And it just seemed like, yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like, yeah, I guess maybe it's just not their year. But then after that, they beat the Bengals, and they were trailing in that game. They were losing, what was it? It was 17-13 at the half. But I think, what was the score at one point? It was 17-7 at one point. But yeah, the Chiefs came back. I mean, Harrison Butker kicked a bunch of field goals. How many field goals did he kick in that game? He kicked... So yeah, he went 6 of 6 from field with field goals. And it's... Again, that hurts me because I had him in fantasy, and the week before against the Raiders, he misses that kick, and I lose by 1 point in my semifinals. If he had that week that he had against the Bengals against the Raiders, I would have won my championship. So Harrison Butker upset me towards the end of the year. And then, obviously, they rested their starters. Again, enough of me complaining. Then, against the Chargers, rested their starters. Chris Jones, got his sack. He played in the game. And the Chiefs actually won the game 13-12. So, yeah, they were locked into the third seed. And, they were going to be playing some road playoff games. And, they got off to a good start, beat the Dolphins 26-7. I mean, the Dolphins really didn't have a chance in this game. Their only big play was the touchdown to Tyreek Hill. But other than that, the Chiefs had that game all the way in that cold weather. And then they go on the road. They play the Bills, Mahomes' first road playoff game. And they played well, get the win 27-24. The Bills had their opportunities, but Ultimately, the Chiefs were able to get the win. And then obviously you have the championship game against the Ravens. They won that game 17-10, even though they got shut out in the second half. So now they are back in the Super Bowl once again. And again, it's in a year where you kind of didn't expect it because of just everything that went on during the regular season. The offense was inconsistent. Travis Kelce looking like he lost a step. Mahomes, 27 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. That's not a bad year, but definitely not the Patrick Mahomes type season that we're accustomed to seeing. But what's really, been a factor for them is their defense. Their defense has been one of the best defenses in the league. Their secondary is one of the best, if not the best. You got Chris Jones on the defensive line. This team looks like a very different team than we saw in the regular season. And like I said, they're in that mode right now, and it is going to be tough to stop them if you're the 49ers. Especially because they're going up against the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. And we'll see what game plan they have for the Chiefs. And we'll see, if they look like the 49ers team that we saw early on in the regular season that was just, dominating against teams, But, yeah, in a season where the offense is not the offensive juggernaut that we're accustomed to seeing, and, there was inconsistencies and, it didn't matter. The Chiefs still got back to this point, and a credit to them. And like we talked about yesterday, they're looked at as the new villain in the NFL. Fans are tired of seeing this team making it to this point, but for me, I think it's unbelievable what they've been able to accomplish. And, they're looking to get that next Super Bowl championship. Mahomes is looking for that third ring. And we'll see if that ends up happening on Sunday, but yeah, that's the Chiefs season. It is definitely was an interesting season for them because this looked like the year where it just was not going to happen, but it did. They still found a way to make it back here, and they're going to try to get it done once again. So before we go into our second break, I just want to remind you guys once again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we will then do an overview of now the San Francisco 49ers 2023 season. I'll give you my thoughts on their journey back to the Super. I know I did that the other day, but I talked about prior seasons and QB changes and things like that. So we'll talk about their season, what happened, and that'll be the third part of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.